Welcome to Trustworthy AI Chronicles, where we explore the cutting edge of AI security, ethics, and innovation. My name is Dr. Ihsen Alouani from the Center for Secure Information Technologies at Queen's University Belfast. Join me to uncover the risks, share the breakthroughs, and spotlight the people shaping the future of trustworthy AI. Today, we are excited to be joined by Lara Sunday, a product manager at Rapid7. With a unique background in social anthropology, Lara brings a fresh perspective to the challenges of AI security and risk management. In this episode, we'll uncover her insights on integrating AI into secure cloud environments and explore her innovative work on the TRISM framework for trustworthy AI. This conversation is not to be missed. Hi, Lara. Nice to have you with us today on the Trustworthy AI Chronicles podcast. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation. We will start by going a bit through your journey, your career, and then we'll have a chat about the intersection between AI security, cloud, ethics. Very interesting thing.
The world in which we live in.
Yeah. First of all, I know you have a fascinating journey. Very atypical, but it's very interesting. And more specifically, you have a background in social anthropology, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And then you moved to cloud security, and now you are in a related to this more product management across different sections. Could you please tell us what did inspire you to go from anthropology to AI security?
Yeah. So I have to go. It seems like an epic journey. Many years ago, I actually, when I was 16, I was learning coding. I decided that was a thing, but I ended up. I had my eldest child when I was quite young, and I didn't go back to it. And then I ended up organic farming for many years. I'm working in the music industry. But then it was in my 30s. I decided to go back to. I'd never been to university. I'd done my A levels, but I didn't go to university. Decided to go and ended up at Queen's studying international politics and conflict studies. But you know the way you can select a module? I took anthropology as a kind of thing. And I liked the anthropology so much, I actually decided to switch. So I ended up completing my degree in social anthropology instead. Now, at the time, I have one of my close friends is a principal security architect and has been for 20 odd years, 30 odd years. And he said, we need people like you in security. I don't know what he meant by this. But at that time, I'd sort of done music event management, quite big festivals and things. But I remember looking at he gave me a CIS book. And I was like, I don't have networking. I'm a very people person. And I was like, and so I graduated and I kind of put it to the side. And then I went back to farming and social care. But I was I felt like I learned so much at university, but I wasn't actually getting to apply it. And so he actually came home at Christmas and he's like, you should really get like project management, do something, like look out for something. And I came across Microsoft Cybersecurity Academy. So it was the Department for Economics in Northern Ireland and businesses. So lots of big companies ran these academies. Some of them were for new in career. Some of them were for like people like wanting to change career. They were kind of gearing. I suppose I was the demographic of a woman with children wanting to change careers, so that they were kind of trying to support that. So Microsoft, it was Darren Dillon, Jerry McIver were driving it, and locally in Microsoft, it was Darren Dillon's idea to do this. So that was 2020, and I went for it. There was like 500 odd people applied, 25 of us got in. It was 12 weeks, 5 exams, and you were guaranteed an interview, but not the job at the end. So technically, it was kind of like the longest interview in the world because you were being kind of gently monitored, I would say, the whole way through. We had to do exercises. It wasn't just, and I got the job. And I began as an associate consultant in Microsoft and then kind of worked my way through, became a consultant and then moved over into unified support as a cloud security architect. Yeah. And yeah, so it was a lot in a short space of time. And then it's been over a year now. So what was that, 23? Cathal O'Neill, I was giving a talk at a Women's Tech Makers on cloud security posture management. I called it Beautiful Security after a book I think it's ancient now. It's like 2014 borrowed from people who put this book together called Beautiful Security. And it was like essays on the conception of different people, like lawyers, architects, like engineers, like what their conception of beautiful could see. So I'd use that as the kind of basis for what I was discussing, which was collaboration and cloud security posture management and how it can be positive and things. So when Cathal O'Neill from Rapid7 had heard me, he's director of software engineering, and he said, have you ever thought about product management? He's like, it's a pathway in Microsoft, but no, I hadn't like really thought of it. And we kind of kept in contact, and then I was kind of excited by the idea of how do you actually put a product, how do you actually develop the product to help customers to do what you're espousing? How could I actually feed that into actually a product itself in that way? And yeah, I've been there just over a year now and love it. I am never bored.
Interesting.
So that is how I ended up for farm and anthropology. Although they all feed. I mean, I did international politics and conflicts a bit.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
They all
Lots of conflicts in security, though. That's
Oh, yeah.
yes. So this is
That's interesting though. So with I think seeing this very diverse background in your day-to-day job, how do you see this background enriching or making a difference in your current job as product manager?
all my career has been quite people focused. And if I'm what I've encountered in the 5 years I've been in security is we have amazing technology. We have an amazing, incredibly intelligent people, but we still have challenges with communication and collaboration. And it's at every level. And I think I've talked about this publicly. Like, I think there was I think the culture within security, and not even just security, I'm talking about the whole business, actually, I should say.
Yeah.
This is not a security people's problem, because I also get annoyed when people kind of, oh, it's the security. It's not. In business, security was a very physical thing. So on-prem, you're stacked, servers were in one room with someone managing it, that one person or two people who knew the dark arts. And then you had an endpoint team here and the IAM team were here. And then you had the business, which is another separate thing with all its separate bits. And it was very siloed, but literally I think there was a physicality to it. And unfortunately, the technology moved forward and became more integrated, especially when it came, when cloud came in. But unfortunately, culturally, there's this mindset, and these still within all business aspects and not just security, of we're still in separate teams.
Silos and teams, yeah.
And I think that I honestly, from an anthropo, I think it's that sort of then in how people interacted or thought. I think sometimes security has forgotten that there's no such thing as security risk. There is any business risk, but also the business seen security as a blocker, but didn't embrace, I think, the conception of how we can work together. And it's not me being idealistic, because I get people go, oh, that's so, but teams that are successful collaborate well. They have diversity of thought. They work together well. And I think getting back to your point of why I think anthropology, I have spent my life bringing people together, working together. And so it's completely alien to me to not involve people and get to know people. Like, I find people interesting. So I want to know, like, in Rapid7, I know the security teams, the governance teams, that do like the marketing team. I like knowing people just sometimes because it's great crack and you can get on a call and learn something new about someone in a totally different part of the world. And it's so it's like, it's alien to me to work any other way. I also think, secondly, I am not deeply technical. You will not find me sitting writing code. But sometimes when you walk into a room, being that person who maybe doesn't understand, but that group of really amazing engineers, people sometimes need someone who's coming from a business perspective and going, how do we make that a reality for everybody else? Because sometimes you can sometimes be so in the weeds that you can't see a bigger picture. And I think so that's where I think you need all those elements to be successful. You need people who are deeply, deeply technical.
Yeah.
But you also need people who are great people person or have an understanding of the business, but being able to bring that all together.
Oh, that's very interesting, especially now. It's probably applicable everywhere in the business or organization wise, but also in the cybersecurity. So, Rapid7, the business of the company is cybersecurity, but sometimes even in companies that have a cybersecurity as just one department,
Yeah.
I think those guys generally they suffer from their reputation of always kind of whining about security because what we are doing in cybersecurity is we are thinking the threats, how could things go wrong, and we are kind of anticipating things, so we came across as annoying people in a sense.
Yeah.
So having people like yourself to make probably people talk, communicate, and collaborate and work together is definitely very valuable.
I think, and because we're on the topic of AI is actually one of the first examples where I can truly say, as a security department, you can illustrate value to the business and that actually be a business enabler. And I think we haven't always been able to articulate business value to, we're always seen as an expense. AI has actually really given us the opportunity to illustrate how we can provide business value and actually maybe cut costs in some respects. We can get into that. But yeah, so I think that's, we're living in a slightly new world in a positive way for security, actually.
Yeah, and you're talking about AI, but now you're, if I may, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you're doing on a daily basis is more related to governance and compliance, right?
Yeah, so I came in to manage, it's called coverage and analysis. So I was responsible as a product manager for coverage. And when I say coverage, it was our cloud coverage. So which resources we support in each of the individual CSPs. But then part of that was actually our compliance packs. I'm now teased because I set up compliance. I'm big into compliance. But it's because I come from a cloud background where policy defines, I say this a lot, policy defines your attack surface in the cloud environment. What you allow to be deployed, how you monitor it, that all, generally for me, and policy and governance is often seen as a stick. I can see it as a carrot because I see it as a positive. You're getting to actually make decisions about what goes on in your environment. It's a lot of work. It's not easy. It's by no means, it's like, but that's why I kind of was quite passionate about it. And over the past year, began to build out a strategy, for compliance. And there I'm responsible across, so inside VM, our vulnerability management policy, so for OS and things, and at platform level, our compliance. And I suppose where AI then came in, how I got interested in AI. AI is built in the cloud, right? For the customers, and so then I had two things going on. We ourselves build in the cloud, Rapid7. We need to be monitoring our own resources. Our customers started developing, as all these new launches have come out, they're leveraging Bedrock. They're, they need to know like what's going on. And so I was like, what can we do? So we already had sort of coverage within Azure, but I wanted to build out for AWS and Vertex. And we've got Oracle coming down the line this year. But it was like, I ended up having to think, and I worked with our customers and our teams to understand what's the components in the cloud that we're using. How can what is the insights that we can use? Now, I think one of the things to remember about, I think everybody lost their mind slightly when they, like how, it launched. I was still at Microsoft when it launched, really into AI now has been around for a very long time, but the change has been the accessibility of it.
Yeah.
There's been a democratization that did not exist before, I think.
Yeah, I think this is also due to the success of Transformers generative AI getting to ChatGPT, because Transformers existed and it has been known in the AI community years before people knew about ChatGPT, before ChatGPT or GPT-2, but it was still nothing that could be very, I don't want to say useful, but nothing that could be mainstream. Let me frame it this way. And I think ChatGPT, the launch and the democratization and being a mainstream tool of people just talking to ChatGPT was definitely an inflection point. And by the way, just for the context, before that, I generally argued for years not to use AI, the term artificial intelligence.
That's because it's one
It is some sort of
ML is a subset. Yeah, this is also the thing
Yeah.
that happens, that people we lump a lot in when we say AI.
Yeah, exactly. So I generally use machine learning in general, but I guess with what we are seeing now as advancement, even though it is still arguable, and I think that there is terms like the general intelligence, AGI.
Yeah.
But I'm more comfortable saying AI now than I was before.
Yeah,
To your point.
I think it's from marketing. We say securing AI.
Yeah.
Like I think it's because it's this big overarching, but the orders of magnitude in such a short space of time
Absolutely.
is insane. Like, it's so incredible. Like,
Yeah. No, so this kind of exponential, let's say, growth and honestly groundbreaking advancement that we are watching, I guess this is also, it brings with it risks, and that's probably my follow-up point is on from management frameworks, regulation perspective. You are, I guess, leading on the TRISM framework.
yes.
Could you tell us about what is it about, and how do you think this is a way to mitigate risks in an AI context?
So Rapid7 has actually been using machine learning and things for 20 years, like in UEBA work and different bits and pieces. What I appreciate working there from an ethics perspective, as me as a human being, what I appreciate working at Rapid7 is that the framework that we follow is TRISM, which is Trust, Risk, and Security Management. So people would maybe be familiar with AI-SPM, which is AI Security Posture Management. We love putting acronyms in front of Security Posture Management. We have an AI Center of Excellence, which is made up of our sort of AI team with engineers, our data scientists. There's some marketing. It's made up of a range of people. I'm involved, and we actually took there was a lot of work done on actually understanding what is important to us. What is the policies? How do we make clear our governance? What is our understanding of what we allow? What is our values? Like, that's to trust risk. If you just, for me, AI, if you talk about AI SPM, that is only the technical. And actually, I think if you want to develop responsibly, the reason we have really leaned in with TRISM is because it encompasses ethics. It encompasses much more. We want to build with trust. We want to have trust in what we're developing, but I think AI actually, security teams, and this is why we all have to work together. When you're building machine learning and you're putting data together and you're trying to think about how you protect it, you actually have to think about what is it you value as an organization? What are your values? What you're creating a chatbot, right? But what are the guardrails that you're going to, what are the definition, like how are you going to define the parameters of its use? What do you care about? And there's so like the OpenAI standard is very good for outlining like processes, questions that a team, if they're developing, should be asking themselves. And a very fundamental questions like, who is in that room when you're talking about your organization's values? Who's communicating that to your security? Like, does there's a couple of things going on here. There's a technical thing of, do you even know how you would implement guardrails, right? Because I think that was I was going to make a point earlier, like, cloud, if you were doing, say, 90% of your cloud hygiene, like just normal cloud hygiene, like your AI development, or whatever way you want it, your machine learning development would actually be secure, because there's a certain point that it is your cloud component, it's your cloud resource. Are you actually secure? What's your misconfigurations? Have you got policies in place? You're then just specifying that to, AI ML components. And I know we can talk about it later, like, because there's new things this year, everything, we're evolving quite fast in this space to take it to the next level. But does your security team know you're building? Does your security team, are they aware that your AI teams are building and things like this? And I think that's something that Rapid7 does very well, is our collaboration. It's why I'm proud to work. Like, it's important to me, but you can see in the space of AI, you need to have everybody in the room to understand what is important to you as an organization. So then you can go, well, what is the technical controls? What are the things we can actually put in place to uphold these?
Yeah, but these values and that you are thinking of or mentioning, is it organization wise definition, or it should be something that is generic, that should be applicable whatsoever?
So when we've been working on this, we look to NIST AI RMF, the EU Act as an example, the open standard for AI, and we sort of ground ourselves in those principles. Do no harm is foundational, and it's a lived experience. It's about also eloquently, as an organization, being able to translate what your principles are. So say the transparency, having it documented, but documented in such a way and communicated to everyone in your organization, so they know, if they're wanting to develop with machine learning, with AI, that they know the process of what is the, like, even that there is a process. I've been in situations with customers where they were not aware that their teams were already developing in this space, which is terrifying to some. Do you know what I mean? Because if you think you have enterprises, they have regional office, global teams doing all many different things, and who have access to many different clouds, and you don't always, do you know what I mean? And if you're not looking for it, or you're not aware that your tool can look for it, and it happens, and it's surprising. It happens more than you would think.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think the more or less in the same line of thoughts about, there's one of the threats that, it existed before, but I guess it is now even more so for AI tools and so on, which is the shadow AI, in the sense of, you have an organization, and a part of the organization are either individuals or groups or whatever, that are either using or setting up a AI-based tool, and no one else is necessarily aware of what is happening, or what is being either developed or used. How do you see this risk, and what are your thoughts on how to mitigate this?
So that was, I suppose, that when we say, how did I get in the AI space? It was when I was working to understand, okay, our teams are like, how do we, obviously we want to drink our own champagne. We wanted, to use our own tool, how are we doing this? So at the time we worked with AWS, especially kind of with the Bedrock coverage, sort of, how do we secure this? So we sort of we developed a compliance pack, and it started off small. We've been building it, and I'll be working to expand it, based on the OWASP top 10 for LLMs. So we started there. When we provide coverage, what we call coverage for support, thing as an example, like misconfigurations, basically of specific components, being able to provide and support. So a team can go in and actually very quickly see, is anybody developing with like the different, they're using comprehension or whatever, but that they can quickly see that. And within a minute of logging into your portal, that you can go to that section of the UI and you can see is someone developed. So that visibility, I suppose, is that first thing. Then actually having policies that you can put in place to have it configured how you would like. Having workflows set up so that your team actually are getting told about that they're aware. Like another product, it's not my area of expertise, but in our inside IDR. So in Ihsen, for instance, the team at the minute look up for shadow IT like DNS logs. Is there alerts set up specifically, and you can create dashboards specifically to look for alerts in your sort of AI ML space developments. So that's kind of two angles from a security operations team, but also from a cloud administration, like cloud operations team perspective. There's also another element of this from a governance and compliance. So you have cloud operations who are maybe BAU teams trying to manage the day-to-day running of their cloud environments, who maybe want insights into this. You have the security operations that also want insights to this. Governance teams being able to come in and see how are we aligned, like how are we doing, how compliant are our resources. So I would say, first off, check if your tools provide you with the visibility you need. I do think that a very important part is bringing your teams together, your C-suite, whoever, your organization's leaders, ensure that they actually have a documented process for how they are tackling. What is their AI policy? Do you know what I mean? What you care about. And when we were talking about diversity of thought earlier, I suppose you could question this or say this is a HR thing. Who is in that room developing? The diversity of the human beings in that room do impact on the decisions that are made of what an organization cares about. So that's a very human thing, but I think it's very important and fundamental to get.
No, absolutely. I think this is pretty obvious in the sense of, if you see companies like OpenAI, for example, if you only limit the perspective to the technical side, we can do whatever we want if you don't have people who are capable of thinking beyond. And sometimes, again, us as either academics or technical people, sometimes we kind of have this blind spot. We don't really, I think it is moving a little bit in the right direction in this sense. For example, some of the conferences and venues, they actually require a section of the authors thinking about the impact, and not the impact in the sense of just the economic impact, but really,
what's the money we can
exactly. It is more what if people use this idea or tool, etc., what could be go either wrong or right in whatever direction. And I think having us including these thoughts in our research is very useful and in the right direction, but also having people who actually think this through in a more fundamental way.
Like, this is the first time, like, we have you mentioned OpenAI, right? There's, depending on what way you think about it, there could be huge changes to society because of all of this. But actually, there's very few people involved who are really driving this. And when we talk about governance of all of this, one of the things we get, it was brought up at that conference we were at recently, and like, you have to balance governance with innovation, because they're scared that if we put too much governance and, people go, oh, the EU Act, because people know, right, if not everybody is following the rules, then the person who gets there first is not the person who maybe took the most care and thought. They were just the person that got there first. And that's actually, if you ask me, one of the biggest challenges of all of this is, and I don't know if this is philosophical or political, I don't know, but that thought of there's going to be a few people who have a lot of power and a lot of say over things that are going to have huge impact. And they're not elected. They're not, no one elected. This is business. This is business having an impact on societies in a way almost like governments do.
Even more than that.
More, because it's going to be so
widespread, almost instantaneous. It's not even almost, technically it is. On this line, I think I like the the position that Yann LeCun took from Meta. His team is almost systematically open sourcing their models, their tools, etc. And I think that's extremely valuable. It is a matter of debate saying, oh, why are you making this open source? I would rather have it open source than having only one company having it. So yeah, no, absolutely. And that's not an easy thing to think about, even let alone tools. Even you think of the data that has been used to train those models. No one asked me what is my opinion if my data has been used or not.
Well, I think the UN paper on it, they brought up, I think, the figures they had. If you actually even think about who's talking about governance and getting a say in governance right now, globally, there's a big disparity between the US are getting it, the UK are getting it, of which countries are actually getting to have a real say and drive in all of these discussions as well. Is not possibly where it should be to really have everybody having input into this. I think there's a bias to where the money sits, where the companies are, whatever, for many reasons. But it's so I think we're having a conversation about technology, but I think it does prompt us to ask philosophical questions and political questions in a way that technology hasn't always. I mean, you could argue. I mean, the industrialism, like when that came about, I think there was huge. We are in another revolution of this, so that's maybe why it is posed. But yeah, it's quite epic. And I suppose because I'm an anthropologist at heart, I find it interesting. How will this impact?
No, that's I think if we see now, it is obvious when we talk about, for example, GDPR. Yeah, that's obvious. You cannot even think without it in data wise. It was not that obvious, and people had this same arguments. Oh, why are you wanting to regulate everything? As well, data is very important, and it's the core, the currency in the cyberspace. So you need to protect it.
People make money off, we hand our data over unknowing, because it's so hard sometimes to see when and where you're handing it over. It's all so subtle. And even that, and there still isn't, I mean, EU, I would say, has always been ahead, more mature in this space of governance in a way that other countries are at varying degrees getting on board with. And it's the health, like, I think it's people use health trackers. And we use them for runs, and people who are even maybe really security conscious, that's not very hand, like it's taking our heart, like all of this data, and and then this is all being used now in ways, and that's where I would say, look at, if you're working with an organization, look at what their policies are. I know what our policy is, and I could get it. It's knowing what they think. How are they using your data? I won't say, opting in or opting out. I really hate that there was this, you're defaulted opted in. I disagree with that. Right? I shouldn't have to find out, oh, you hold on, what? And then choose to, that's I'm disappointed in things recently where I found that they were doing that.
Yeah. So there's this, I think, challenge from organizational perspective, but there is also the technical challenge. Sometimes, even in the EU AI Act, there are things that are required, like either, say, transparency or explainability or even security of AI. It is not technically solved. It's not something that we just have it. It is. We are also, even in the academic community, navigating our way to solve those very challenging problems. In databases, having personal data is one thing. Having the right to be forgotten and to delete your data is one thing. So it is almost purely organizational, in the sense of, once you have the regulation, you could more or less apply it. While for AI, if a model has been trained on my data, trying even to apply GDPR in this case, it is not way far from being straightforward to be applied. So that's probably one more layer of complexity. But yeah, this does not mean we should not regulate. It is more of
I think that's what makes it even more important that we're having these conversations right now. And that goes back to, I said, people lost their mind. And the point I was actually making there was that it's cloud hack. Like from a cloud perspective, if you were just actually securing your cloud, you're probably most of the way there. But now it's at a point where, okay, how do we govern this? But then that goes back to innovation and governance, this perpetual,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, generally I see it, I think at least I frame it myself as, instead of a constraint of either the ethical or whatever constraint, I think if we frame it as objective, this makes probably more sense. Having a solution towards more trustworthy, robust, explainable, etc., is probably a better way of framing it than say, "Oh, we have this constraint of making it reliable."
So when I said earlier about AI giving us an opportunity in security about as an enabler, and I do like to try and think in terms of how can security, how can compliance actually be a business enabler? How can you, one of the things, like if you are using, so there's one level when I said, so it's cloud misconfiguration at its very basic. How are you securing in the cloud? Like at that level, it's your misconfigurations. What is now being released by each of the cloud providers is specific controls and features that you can enable. So AWS guardrails, placing those in agents. It's only now like things like the Azure Prompt Shield came out. So they're doing that next level that we didn't have before, where you can say as a security can actually look at your architecture and go, well, if you actually put, guardrails on your agents, you will actually save money. And it's a very little thing, but if you're in a huge company making thousands of calls, I don't know, but it's the first time you can really articulate as a security team, it's worthwhile you talking to me because we can actually help each other here. I can save you money. We can also, like, I think a business should have integrity and trust, and you should want to put a product out that is secure, you can help each other, and that hasn't always been easy for security teams to articulate the value of because we're just seen as a cost. Whereas if you can illustrate by working to us at an earlier stage, understanding the architecture that you're using, thinking about what are the elements that we can bring in here to actually make this a secure, but fundamentally save you money. That's not, this is what I think is exciting. Like we actually can really drive collaboration between teams on these points.
Absolutely, which is not easy to get equilibrium, if you want. To finish, it was really great having your thoughts, Lara. For newcomers, especially those who have probably atypical careers or non-technical backgrounds, or even in general, what are your thoughts about opportunities and challenges that you see considering the trend that we are having from a technology perspective on AI, on cybersecurity, on cloud, and so on?
So I think one of the things is to remember that you need lots of different background. Like this is not even an AI. Like this is a cybersecurity. I think that can be value found from people from the social sciences perspectives that they can bring. I think there's a lot of interdisciplinary work now being done between law. I was speaking with law students who are taking cybersecurity modules as an example. I think that the challenges we face are who's smart enough to do some of the bar for some of the knowledge when it comes to AI development and quantum. It's actually very high. I think people have been able to code, and there was a wider swath of people maybe, whereas it's becoming even more nuanced who has the technical knowledge to be able to actually deliver AI products, quantum, whatever it may be. So if you are upskilling, there will always be people who can just purely focus and from technically really deliver in that space. I think upskill, like we were actually talking about this earlier. I said like you do a lot of research. I listened to it, and I actually tried out Google Notebooks LM to try it because it was forming a podcast. I thought that was incredibly interesting. But find an area you're interested. I'm interested in governance and compliance, right? I'm interested in it probably because I'm interested in human beings and the impact. I don't know, but and try and study that area. Get to know, even if you're in any sort of department of security coming into it, learn about the wider market. Do understand the impacts. I mean, if as a product manager, we need to understand the market, who we're selling to, but also just having awareness of the geopolitics, what's coming. I once got great advice. There was someone I admired greatly. And he went between answering a nuclear security question to something else. And I went, how do you know like someone? He says, I read a lot. So there is an element of educating and being open to learning about a variety of things. But I think the challenges that are faced are, in a technical perspective, who will have the skills and to actually work at that level. It's not... You have Python code. Do you know what I mean? But who knows, like deep, like how many people in the world are doing AI? Do you know what I mean? Like that becomes narrow. So it is going to be challenging, I think, as we go forward. But then maybe we can leverage AI to actually, solve these problems. Like I'm leveraging, for research and things because I want to read and get synopses from lots of things. So advice to anybody, and also don't be put off. Like if you come from a non-traditional background, don't be put off, and there's people come into security for various reasons. I find security fascinating. I mean, there was a reason I was studying international politics and conflict studies. But yeah, I'd say, and now is the time in some ways. It's a really we are at the point it's really interesting right now to be in this space. I get to work I get to meet people like yourselves. I am not an academic, I'm not an engineer, but I get to work with some fascinating people who I greatly respect. And I learn, I'm never, like I said, I'm never bored. It's really exciting. We're living in, you could argue everybody's been living, but I think we truly are living in bigger questions are going to be asked, bigger things. And it's nice. I think, don't be confident, do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're dead, like, do it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lara, for your time and for your thoughts. It was great having you.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely continue. We are already collaborating on the hub, and
No, it's exciting, our partnership. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No,
thank you, Lara.